The Warriors' 5-game winning streak was short-lived because they went back on the road, and the road is clearly something they're allergic to. So we're going to break down why, and a lot of stuff going on with the Warriors pertaining to their roster. Steph and Curry came back, a whole lot to discuss. Kylen Mills and I get it going next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Use the promo code Locked On. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and so much more at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. It is Monday. The Warriors played a game on Sunday. Early game. I don't know if that made a difference. I feel like it did because the Warriors were lethargic for a lot of that. But nonetheless, the 5-game winning streak is over. They lose a road game that I thought they should have won. What was your reaction to that game, Kylen? And hello.
Hello, Cyrus, and to everyone who is listening or watching. The road struggles continue for the Warriors. I mean, I just feel like a broken record at this point saying, what is the issue? Why does this team turn back into a pumpkin when they head on the road? Like, it just does not make any sense. The Warriors had so much momentum, winning 5 in a row, dominating in that homestand at Chase Center, and then they started out slow. They just looked discombobulated. I mean, the third quarter Warriors, we liked the momentum they were bringing in after the halftime break. The last couple games, that was gone. Yeah. It's kind of baffling as to how the Warriors continue to struggle on the road. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But the slow start absolutely plagued the Warriors. That first quarter was just brutal. And, they dug themselves into a hole that was tough to get out of. The Dubs played well in the second, but then once again, coming out and struggling quite a bit in the third. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as how they started the game, but still it wasn't good. And, it's just some frustration. It was great to see Steph Curry back. Also good to see Andre Iguodala get some minutes, which I think we'll dive into a little bit more later. Steph started a little slow. I mean, I will say he definitely had to shake some of the rust off, which is totally fine, totally acceptable in what you expect coming off an injury like he's been dealing with. But, you would like to see the team get a win with Steph back in the lineup and to continue the momentum they built up during that homestand.
Absolutely right. It was a game that had some sort of contentiousness in terms of Kerr's rotations. One thing that I took considerable umbrage with was the fact that I thought the days were officially over of Jonathan Kuminga having a short leash. It's some players will not start off the game strong. It doesn't mean they're going to finish the game struggling. Some players need time to warm up. My adage that I've been echoing on this short endlessly is good things happen when Kuminga plays. Well, in this game yesterday, Kuminga was pulled after 13 minutes. Andre Iguodala, who I thought speaking of rust, Iguodala you're right, he looked good. He was playing good defense out there, I thought. He's a ball handling wing, so he kind of relieves the pressure in terms of the point guard position and in terms of distributing the ball, handling the ball. But what I didn't like, and I didn't expect this to be like a controversial position, but apparently is that the Warriors and Steve Kerr more specifically decided that he was going to take Kuminga's minutes away and give those to Iguodala. Like Iguodala's 14 minutes in yesterday's Warriors-Lakers game came at the expense of Jonathan Kuminga, not at the expense of Anthony Lamb. Anthony Lamb finished the game with 27 minutes. Jonathan Kuminga finished with 13 minutes. So you can see exactly where Andre Iguodala's 14 minutes came from. And I didn't think the results merited a decision like that. For the people that defend Kerr saying, well, he knows best. Some people bring up the plus minus because Anthony Lamb led the team in plus minus at plus 17. If anything, when Anthony Lamb is leading the team in plus minus and the result is an 8-point loss, that should indicate to you his impact on this team overall. Anthony Lamb just should not be playing this much. I think he gets an insane run. We're going to talk in just a minute about his status, but Kylen, your thoughts. Like, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you have a different opinion altogether? Like, do you think Jonathan Kuminga should have played more than 13 minutes? And do you think Anthony Lamb's 27 minutes was justified?
I think that Jonathan Kuminga should have absolutely played more in this game. I mean, in the Warriors' previous 4 victories, when they had come back from double-digit deficits, Jonathan Kuminga was plus 40 and playing some of his best basketball with back-to-back 20-plus point performances in the previous 2 games. Yeah, he gets a slow start, but I feel like his play lately, which Steve Kerr acknowledged were some of his best minutes he'd put in all season long, had earned him some of that, longer leash, some of that extra rope where he should have been able to play through some of those mistakes that we saw early. Give him the opportunity to play through a slow start. And it's the way that we've seen Steve Kerr treat a lot of the young players on this team throughout the season. However, I just feel that the way that Jonathan Kuminga played as of late, especially during this 5-game road stretch, he deserved that longer leash. He deserved more leeway to play through a slow start or those mistakes and be treated the way that some of the veterans are treated. Now, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about Anthony Lamb in a minute, and I don't think it's fair to blame the loss on him, but I do just continue to struggle with some of the comparisons and how Steve Kerr will allow Anthony Lamb, at times Ty Jerome, allow some of the other vets basically to play through mistakes, but Jonathan Kuminga wasn't given that same treatment in this game. And I feel like he has earned it. I know something a lot of fans say as well. Young players have to earn their minutes. They have to earn that time. I do feel like Jonathan Kuminga's play, especially the tear he's been on after the All-Star break, has earned him a little bit more leeway. And I would have liked to see him get some more minutes and see if he could bounce back or respond from maybe a slow start.
Yeah, and look, and I love how people in the chat, I highlighted, for example, NBA 876 saying Jonathan Kuminga was horrible last night. I love how certain hyperbole is perfectly okay against certain players. You're calling him horrible. He had 6 rebounds in 13 minutes that he played in. His shooting wasn't great. He was 2 for 10, but a lot of those missed shots were drives to the basket that he just missed layups. Just little things like that if he gets a longer run, he can correct some of those mistakes. He could correct the 2 for 10 shooting. So what? Do you just, to people like NBA 876, you just think that he should be on this confidence-killing short leash where if he has a not-so-great start, not a horrible is a strong word. I don't think he was horrible at all. He also has 3 inches on Anthony Lamb. He's a better defender than Anthony Lamb. He's almost as good of a three-point shooter. People forget Kuminga's shooting almost 36% from 3. That's not bad. That's actually good. He's not a bad shooter. I don't understand why people are okay with just these. It kills confidence when a 20-year-old that has a slow start to a game and he's pulled because of it. That does not help his confidence. All that does is make him sit there and stew and think twice about everything he's done. That doesn't help at all in terms of his development. And not to mention, if you're going to look at Kuminga's plus minus, which was minus 15, and bear that as a barometer for pulling him out or for playing Anthony Lamb, well, then are you also going to pull out Klay Thompson, who finished minus 27? Are you going to pull out Kevon Looney, who finished minus 26? Stephen Curry finished minus 12. Even he wasn't playing great despite leading all scores for the game with 27. It's just he has to get a run. I don't agree at all with Kerr. Just the moment Kuminga has a slow start going, nope, I'm done with you. I don't believe in you. There was an article I think Anthony Slater wrote about how Kuminga was affecting the spacing on the floor offensively and how maybe that's the reason why he was pulled. Again, I didn't see that. Not to mention Kuminga does space the floor because he's a good three-point shooter. He's not a liability there. So I don't understand why Kuminga was pulled. Meanwhile, there was this soundbite of Steve Kerr after the game, which is very fascinating because he talked about the Anthony Lamb situation. And the Anthony Lamb situation is fascinating because he has played his 50th game. And that means unless he gets a guaranteed deal, his season is done. Here's Steve Kerr talking about Anthony Lamb after yesterday's Warriors-Lakers game.
I know you're not necessarily pulling that lever, but do you need him on the roster?
I'd like to have Lamb on the roster. He plays an important role for us because he connects a lot of lineups with his ability to space the floor and shoot the three. And then he just plays the way we've always played with, 0.5 basketball, make a quick decision, drive it, pass it, shoot it. And then he's big and versatile enough to guard multiple spots. So he connects a lot of our lineups. When we play two bigs, we can have him at the 3 or you can play him at the 4. So he's been really helpful for us this year, and we'd love to get him on the roster, and we'll see what happens.
And newsflash, Kuminga can do all those same things, but clearly Kerr wants Lamb. I mean, he literally expressed that. It is not his final decision. It is up to Bob Myers and Joe Lacob if they give him that guaranteed deal. I have no idea what's going to happen, but also on the Anthony Lamb train, and when we come back, we're definitely going to dive into this, is that on Friday, the San Francisco Examiner released and published a report that the Warriors never contacted the individual who is accusing Anthony Lamb of raping her. Kendall Ware has not been in any regard, according to a lawyer. And again, this is a story published Friday by the San Francisco Examiner. The lawyer claims that the Warriors did not reach out, and it raises the question of what the Warriors interpret as due diligence. I mean, that's the phrasing that they used in terms of the research they did before signing Anthony Lamb. And they released that statement just on Friday in a response to the story to the Examiner. When we come back, we will touch on that story because it should not be swept under a rug, folks. I'm sorry. This is, again, and this is a news report that just came out. This is fresh news that we're going to touch on in just a second, in addition to Anthony Lamb's status the remainder of the season. First, I got to give some love to PrizePicks. This is what we talked about at the beginning of the show. Let me get my overlay. And PrizePicks is a super fun, in my opinion, super fun application, game, platform, website, whatever you want to call it. It's all about over-unders and gambling, or playing daily fantasy with individual players, 2 to 6 players. You got to pick a minimum of 2, a maximum of 6. And it's all about OUs. It's whether or not Stephen Curry is going to score more or less than 27.5 points, for example. It's more or less than Draymond Green getting 9.5 rebounds, for example. You're betting on those over-unders, and if you win money. It's that simple. In fact, if you decide to make a 6-player trade, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. And one of the best parts about this is that entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and it's safe and fast withdrawals. You don't have to deal with sketchy wire services. The money comes right back to you when you win. It's operational in over 30 states in Canada, including us here in California. Download the PrizePick app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks gives you $100. If you deposit $50, they give you $50. Whatever you put in, they will match it. Just don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at Dogsurf Roadshow. This Anthony Lamb thing, and I want to address this real quick before I turn to you. Dazon Sanchez, for example, writes that I've made it personal with Lamb. No, I have not. I have not once. All I'm doing is reporting what's out there and what's in this lawsuit. Blame the San Francisco Examiner if you think there should be blame pointed for reporting this story. For the people that are saying that are siding with Lamb, what if this really happened? Are you just literally preferring to sweep it under the rug because it has not been proven yet in a court of law? That's ridiculous to me. Kylen, what are your thoughts on this whole situation? Because it is ugly, I think.
It is ugly, and some folks mentioned the chat. They saw me tweet out. I just happened to come across the San Francisco Examiner article yesterday, late morning, early afternoon. It was published on Friday afternoon. Had not seen it and hadn't seen it, honestly, really being reported on or circulated amongst other media. So I tweeted it out so people had that information, were aware of it. What the article said, as Cyrus mentioned, is just that the San Francisco Examiner reporter did reach out to Kendall Ware and her attorney, and the attorney said that the Warriors had never reached out to her in any type of due diligence or independent investigation they did into the allegations against Anthony Lamb. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because a brand new lawsuit came out that Kendall Ware had filed against the University of Vermont because she said that they violated Title IX and what those expectations are by not protecting her when she reported this alleged rape that she says happened in those documents. It did name Anthony Lamb. This was the first time, that December lawsuit was the first time she had named him in a legal setting. And it also that court documents and that civil suit included a lot of graphic details about what she says happened. Now, I'm not going to try to be judge, jury, and executioner and say he did it, he didn't do it. But what I do think is that it needs to be taken seriously and it does need to be looked into. And for folks who say, well, so-and-so wasn't charged, I do think it's important to note and get the information out there that most rapes do not result in charges. Only 20%, according to FBI data, of rapes that are reported to the police lead to arrests, because it is something that's so hard to prove. And it's something that, just does not work to the victims, advantage, essentially. Rapes, most that are reported, nothing ends up happening. Nothing ends up coming of it. And a very, very small percentage of reported rapes, by the way, because I know people always say this, what if it's a false accusation? Very, very small, a couple percent that are reported are estimated to be false accusations. So you got to look at the big picture of those being reported, most being true. Most of them don't result in arrest, and it's very difficult to prove in some of these he said, she said situations. So to say the bar is set at the legal setting, well, often the court system fails women when it comes to accusations of sexual assault and rape. The court system does fail, unfortunately, and women don't get to see justice for their perpetrators oftentimes. So I just think that's something that you need to keep in mind when saying, oh, well, if there's no charges, if there's no conviction, then, this is a non-issue. Well, what are the standards that you want to set for your organization? Do you want to be positive that this individual didn't commit this crime before you're touting them and paying them millions of dollars and putting them out there as the face of your organization? And I think that it's a fair discussion. It's an important discussion that needs to be had, and to each their own in regards to their opinion on that. But I mean, I guess my question now after this report came out is just what exactly was the due diligence that the Warriors did, because they previously had released a statement. They reached out to Lamb's prior teams in addition to the NBA regarding, anything they'd been able to find out. But this lawsuit that came out in December was the first time we were seeing any of these details and Anthony Lamb's name in writing as being accused of rape. So to me, there should have been a renewed re-examination of what some of these accusations are. The Warriors have the resources to where I do feel like they could have independently looked into that rather than relying on the league or previous teams who didn't necessarily have this most recent information independently look at this. And I know a lot of fans, from what I'm seeing, just don't want them to deal with it at all. Why put up with the controversy? Why even have this kind of cloud hanging over the team where there could be further advancements in the case? I mean, new evidence could come out. What if there's an additional accuser? I mean, you just don't know what's going to come down the pipe. And I know a lot of fans just kind of feel like, why at this point, the Warriors organization surround themselves with a controversy for a two-way player that, really didn't have any previous ties with the organization. This is his first season type of deal. And I completely understand those fans' frustration and seeing it that way. Why even do that? I personally, like I said, I'm not going to call for the guy's head by any means. But I do think it's something that if you take it seriously, you have to do your own kind of research and investigation, especially after the new details come out in this lawsuit. So as a woman who is a fan, who's a follower, who has covered this team in the media, it is disappointing to hear, that we really don't know exactly what that due diligence was at this point, since they didn't contact the victim. We don't really know exactly what investigating, if any, the Warriors did on their own.
I wholeheartedly agree. And sorry, Gilbert Arbalo, you would lose the world if you honestly bet the world that I would keep my mouth shut about this if Lamb was a decent basketball player. If Stephen Curry was accused of raping someone and it was in the news on Friday, I would touch on the story. Okay, I'm not that shallow. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous assumption. Look, and the issue here specifically is the fact that the Warriors did not do their due diligence despite saying so. How difficult is it to reach out to the victim? It's not that hard to simply reach out to the lawyer, call her yourself, and get her side of the story. It's not that difficult to do so. And that's what the Warriors fail to do. And that's where the question of due diligence comes into play. It's also very important to note that almost everyone who has an opinion on this has not read the lawsuit. I strongly encourage reading that lawsuit. Yes, you have to actually read more than 240 characters or 280 or whatever it is. You have to actually read a few pages of a document to understand what happened here. one of the fundamental issues with this case that really disturbs me, among many things, is the fact that the reason why due process may not bring justice in this case is because Kendall Ware, when this incident happened, was afraid to go to the police because of the culture that the University of Vermont had developed in Burlington, Vermont, where the police was in their pocket. She was afraid of that. She did go to the university. The university tried to completely cover this story up, and the police and the university did not want to get the police involved themselves. So when you talk about due process, every situation is different. And in a situation like this, where Anthony Lamb, who was a god, that was his stature in Burlington, Vermont during this time, as the best athlete at the university, she was deathly afraid of getting people involved because of his stature there and because of how much they typically protect their athletes. That is why there is a massive lawsuit right now involving more than one person. And the theme is that university protects players when they do actions like this. And Blimey Maynard, I would think it would be the Warriors' responsibility as an influential corporation to at least do their research before hiring someone who has this allegation hanging over them. I agree to disagree if you don't think that's the case, but if you're running a company and one of your employees has an allegation like this hanging over them, where someone has come out and filed a lawsuit, this might go to trial, in which case a lot of ugly things will come out if that happens. And if you read the lawsuit, there are a lot of specifics there where Anthony Lamb you have to read it. Because otherwise I did a whole show that got screwed up because of technical issues because of this platform we're on. I could do another 30-minute show if you want, where I can literally go through the whole lawsuit with all the notes that I've saved to explain to you what this lawsuit's about and why Anthony Lamb is so involved in this. It is not a good look for him. And all I'm saying is I think the Warriors, if they were smart, would have reached out to her to get a better feel for the situation, because they didn't know Anthony Lamb before October. So why are you instilling all this trust in Anthony Lamb when you don't know him at all? Even now, he's been on the team for a total of 5 months. Do you folks out there trust people like wholeheartedly 100% after knowing them for 5 months, let alone when you don't know them at all, which is what the situation was when they first brought him in? So that's why I take a little umbrage with this, is that don't put yourself in situations where you might be accused of this in the first place. There are a lot of instances in that lawsuit that are going to be proven because there are witnesses to a lot of what happened in this case. And this is where the trial is going to reveal a lot of things. And all I'm saying is, if you're the Warriors, do your due diligence, do your research. This story that came out on Friday by the Examiner just shows they did not do their research. So I don't know, Kylen, did I explain that clearly or no? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, you absolutely did. And I just want to really quickly, before we move on, because I don't want to, harp on this forever, but I do think it's something that there should be a light shed on it, and it should be an issue. A couple people are saying, well, it's outside of basketball. Why is this relevant? Because the Warriors are an organization that has held themselves to the highest ethical and moral standards. And that's something they've hung their hats on for years. And we've seen the Warriors be active in a number of different arenas of social justice, the head coach speaking out, players, the organization championing women. And that's something that they have said that they stand for, is a number of these morals and ideals and ethics. And that's part of the reason why a number of fans really respect and admire this organization. And if you're going to say that, then I do believe the players need to be held to a higher moral standard of just, hey, show up, go on the court and play basketball. There is, and I've worked for TV stations. Every TV station I've worked for includes a morality clause in our contracts that there are certain behaviors we cannot do because we are held to a higher standard as someone who is in the media and in the public light. And, that's something that applies across the board to many professional athletes. And we've seen the NBA, and every season there are new discussions around every professional league in what the ramifications are for accusations, for domestic violence accusations, whether it leads to arrests or not. And the current agreement in the NBA doesn't require a conviction or charge in order for a player to be disciplined for some type of incident relating to sexual violence, assault, domestic violence, and that type of thing. So that's why it's relevant, is I understand it's outside of the game of basketball. And someone else mentioned, well, why would she answer their calls? They're not the police. And maybe she wouldn't. But, at least the Warriors could have said, hey, we did reach out to the victim just to try to hear her side of the story. And I do think that, just reaching out is validating to victims. And in this case, she's an alleged victim, but, to at least give her a voice and give her the opportunity. And if she doesn't respond, then, it is what it is. But I do think it's relevant because the Warriors have been a high class organization from top to bottom. They have hung themselves on, having the highest ethical standards. So I do believe that it is, the responsibility of the organization to then make sure that you're also upholding your players to those standards as well.
I'm with you as well. Look, if we could always do a bonus episode on this if we need to continue this further, but I just don't see how you can argue with the idea that the Warriors saying that they, were duly diligent when they didn't reach out to her. I think that's a fair criticism. I'll leave it on that. And we'll revert back to basketball. There's still a lot to talk about. Stephen Curry did have his first game back. I don't know, Kylen, are you okay if we move on? I mean,
Yep, let's move on. Again, I don't want to over hit this. I think it's good that we talk about it. I think conversations need to be had about this. And, that it's something to be taken into context as the Warriors decide whether to sign Anthony Lamb, as we don't know what the future could hold. And you mentioned also this lawsuit goes to trial. There's going to be a lot of discovery. There's going to be witnesses brought in who are going to be having a lot to say about Anthony Lamb. And although he is not a defendant in the case, he is going to be a central piece who's going to be talked about a lot. So, that's something that could be in the news down the pipe and that you could be seeing a lot about and could end up being very damning for Anthony Lamb. So just keep an eye out. And I understand fans' frustration in regards to the whole situation.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's talk about, so I know this is not a smooth transition. Apologies to Built Bar, but it is ad time, and Built Bar is one of our longtime sponsors. Look, maybe eating a delicious treat like Built Bar will make you feel better after such a serious discussion and topic like that. And Built Bar is one of the many beautiful things about them, besides the fact that they're covered in 100% real chocolate, despite the fact that they make unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut, almond, is the fact that they're relatively good for you, meaning they're only 130 calories per bar. They're only on average 4 grams of sugar per bar, and sugar is absolutely horrible for you. Yet they also pack a punch with 17 grams of protein. And if you don't have time, if you don't want to wait to order one by going to built.com, go to your local Walmart, go to your local Sam's Club. Walmart has 4-bar boxes. Sam's Club has 13-bar boxes. And of course, you can go to built.com and order a wide variety of flavors. Check them out and then thank us later.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. I want to share this graphic with you, Kylen, and to the audience. And by the way, sorry, you can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Kylen Mills. This graphic was on ESPN's First Take this morning, which shows the road woes of the Golden State Warriors and how they're basically like two completely different teams. At home, they're 27-7. On the road, they're 7-24. What's particularly alarming about that stat right there, beside the fact that the Warriors own the 3rd worst road record in the NBA, that's a fact, that's not hyperbole, is the fact that they've played 3 less road games than home games this year. So they have 3 more road games to play as this season dwindles down. Their offense does not take a big hit on the road. They're averaging 118 points per game at home, 116.4 on the road. Collectively, that's good for second best in the NBA. But on the road is where their defense completely collapses. At home, they average a solid 111.6 in terms of points per game given up. On the road, they give up 123 point.
You're muted, Cy. Maybe. Did I do something?
Oh, shoot.
Oh, now I hear you.
Oh, yeah. That was, sorry. Did I cut out for a long time there, or the system just?
Just a minute.
Okay. The system
just
collapsed there.
30 seconds. I don't know. 30 seconds.
Yeah, that was just the system. All of a sudden, it just said you got muted, and then it unmuted itself. Sorry about that, folks. But just to wrap it up, opposing points per game is where the Warriors are getting killed. They're giving up nearly 12 points per game more on the road, and they give up the second worst opponent 3-point percentage, where opponents on the road are hitting 40% of their threes. When they play the Warriors at Chase, they're hitting 32%. of them. This is Stephen Curry talking about the road splits. And here he is. Here's Steph.
Our road splits have been trash all year in all categories. So just trying to correct that as much as possible is our challenge. First quarter, we were down 20, and to fight our way back shows you how much it matters to us to try to get over the hump on the road. We just got to have a better start.
Yeah, and Steph had a great game considering he's missed a month. At 27 points to lead the Warriors. Wasn't enough though. The Warriors lose this game in LA. I was colossally disappointed in the effort and the fact that Jonathan Kuminga was pulled early. I thought he could have helped the team late. Jordan Poole wasn't even in the game at the end. And then Kerr did some weird move in the fourth quarter where Steph had a hot hand. He got pulled for Anthony Lamb. It was just a mess. Your thoughts on Steph's return and the road woes?
Yeah, some of the rotations I thought were a little odd to me, and specifically you brought up the Anthony Lamb for Steph Curry in the fourth quarter, and that to me was an interesting move that I didn't quite understand. Yeah. As I mentioned previously, though, at the beginning of the episode, the road struggles are just bizarre because with this Warriors team, as I mentioned before, they have enough veterans that they should know how to handle, playing games on the road and the struggles of being in a different environment. And, these are the professional of professionals that we have on the Warriors team that won all these championships. So it's strange to me that they seem to go on the road and just be totally discombobulated and lacking energy, like the way they came out against the Lakers. LA isn't that far, Cyrus. Like, it's not like you have the excuse of flying cross country, being in a different time zone, right. Having to go through just the, physical burdens of travel. Like, LA is a 40-minute flight or, a 6-hour drive. Obviously, they're flying on a private jet, but I mean, you're there before you know it. So, like, to me, I just don't understand how they come out looking that bad against the Lakers after the Warriors had looked so good in the last 5 games. This season, I got to say, has been a roller coaster. And, fans in the chat, tell me if you've been on this with me too. Like, 1 second, I'm like, the Warriors are back. Mm-hmm. They're doing it. We're back. We are going to be a threat in the postseason. The Warriors got this. The last 5-game streak, I was feeling that way. And again, prior in the season, they've come up with some huge wins over the Grizzlies, the Celtics. You're like, hey, this is it. This could be a team. And then they're just so inconsistent that suddenly a day later, I feel totally different. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, that after this 5-game win streak, I was like, this is it. The Warriors are on the up and up. They're going to climb. And for once, they're not going to have that dip back down. They're going to continue because Steph Curry's coming back. And then theoretically, at some point, Andrew Wiggins will be coming back. And so the team is starting to come together and put together wins without 2 of their best players. Adding those 2 in the mix, it's going to be all up from here. And that just didn't happen. And now, granted, I do think that Steph Curry, like I said, had a little bit of rust to shake off. Not an insane shooting night, although he did, put up a good number of points as he always does. But that was to be expected. I do think it's interesting, though. Something that I had looked at after last night's game is that the Warriors are 20-19 when Steph Curry plays this season. And something that, you could look at from prior seasons is that typically the record is much better when Steph plays versus when Steph is injured.
Not this year. Not this year.
And this year, that's not the case. Exactly. That's not the case. I saw a couple of people in the chat saying Steph Curry is, disrupting actually, or is ruining the momentum or, something along those lines. And I mean, there's no question Curry is one of the greatest players of all time, which just makes it so strange that the team, hasn't had a better record when he does play versus when he's injured. I mean, it's essentially the same. 500, a game or 2 above 500. So why that is, that's a tough question to answer because, again, Steph still is a great player. We'll just have to see if the Warriors can figure it out. I just, they've got to win on the road and, they haven't been able to figure it out. And I also want to mention Andrew Wiggins. So a couple people were asking early in the episode, what's going on? No word on Andrew Wiggins. None. The team is radio silent. I mean, Bob Myers was just asked about it like last week. Steve Kerr has been asked. They're not going to say anything. They're respecting his privacy at this time. They're not going to divulge anything more about the situation. I think reporters in the media around the Warriors are also trying to respect his privacy. So you're not really seeing anyone doing any crazy digging or having a certain story come out, with sources behind the scenes, because I think everyone really is just trying to respect the privacy of Andrew Wiggins and his family, whatever he's going through. So unfortunately, we don't have more answers for you right now. And I know it's a question everyone wants to know. Tomorrow marks 3 weeks since Andrew Wiggins first took that leave of absence from the team just before the All-Star break. He's not going to be back tomorrow. The injury report is out. He remains away from the team, and there is no timeline for his return. And unfortunately, that's all we can say, because once again, it is clearly a touchy situation. It's a sensitive situation. Something is going on with Andrew Wiggins' family. And I think everyone around the Warriors and covering the Warriors is just trying to respect that and that, give him the opportunity when he does come back to speak on whatever has gone on. And so unfortunately for right now, the Warriors are going to have to move without him and continue to move forward.
Yeah. It is a crazy situation. Well, it's not going to get easier because this is a team that, as we've talked about endlessly, sorry, apologize for that. And the schedule upcoming. I mean, the Warriors currently still have the 5th seed to themselves, but they only have a half-game lead over the Timberwolves and a 1-game lead over both the Mavericks and the Clippers. The margin of error is so slim. And when you look at their upcoming schedule, they have 2 more games remaining on this road trip. They play at OKC tomorrow. We'll have a post-game show after that game. And then on Thursday, they play at Memphis, and the Grizzlies have their own problems. I actually had sympathy for a moment for the Grizzlies fan base. I mean, it takes a lot for me to get the feels for that fan base, and I actually did. And then they come home for 2 games, 2 huge home games on Saturday, March 11th, ABC nationally televised game at home against the Bucks, who are smoking hot. And then 2 days later, they'll play the Suns at home. And then it's another 5-game road trip. And at the end of that road trip, this is going to be Wednesday, March 22nd. They finish up their road trip in Dallas, meaning 7 of their next 9 games are on the road. I really think we're going to find out a lot by then. Like, I think you can kind of make good predictions on this team by the end of that point, because if they're still playing like this on the road, they're not only no longer going to be in that 5 seed, but they're going to be back in that position where they're fighting to get into the playoffs. But I read someone in the chat say that the regular season doesn't matter. To a certain degree, you're right, but they need to show that they can win. And some of the younger, unproven players need to kind of step it up a little more. It's crazy. It is crazy. You're absolutely right, Kyle. In 1 minute, like, you feel great about this team, you think they're back, and then just one road game, and suddenly you're questioning them all over again. You have no idea what they're going to do.
Yep.
What is going to happen? I'm very curious to see what happens here with Anthony Lamb in terms of his roster spot. He officially is no longer eligible to play in games. What do you think's going to happen? Like, is he just going to fade off into the sunset? Like, are they just going to basically make the announcement that he's not staying with the team by not saying anything? Do you think he's going to get that guaranteed deal? Lester Quinones is still on that 10-day deal, so that has to expire first. Any inkling, any thoughts on what you think is going to happen with Lamb?
I mean, I think that they're going to sign Anthony Lamb. Steve Kerr came out and said he wants Anthony Lamb. And at this point, based on what we've heard Bob Myers say when talking about the buyout market and talking about bringing players in, Bob Myers essentially alluded to the fact that he wasn't happy that Steve Kerr never played James Wiseman. And one of his quotes that he said, and you folks, we talked about it on the show, you may remember that he was like, he said, we're going to look and see if there's any pieces we can add. But we're not going to add a 7-footer or a big if the coaching staff isn't going to play them. So it's got to be someone that the coaches want and are going to play. Like, that was literally the quote from Bob Myers. And to me, like I said, who's a 7-footer? Hint, hint, wink, wink, James Wiseman. So to me, like I said, reading between the lines, I feel like he had to be alluding to that situation. But Bob Myers flat out said, like, we're not going to bother bringing someone in that the staff isn't going to play. And it's clear the staff, and by staff, I mean at least Steve Kerr, who has come out and said it directly, wants Anthony Lamb. So I think Bob Myers is going to give in to that because Steve Kerr loves Anthony Lamb. Clearly, he's going to play him. And you bring someone in, they've got to try to integrate to the system. Steve Kerr doesn't like bigs, or at least traditional bigs in general. So you run the risk of bringing someone in and Steve not playing them. And then I think clearly, if you don't do anything at all, the Warriors are way too thin at the front court, and they can't rely on Andre Iguodala to be able to sustain any type of stretch of minutes at this point. You just don't know how his body's going to respond. So to me, Anthony Lamb is what they're going to do. And that's going to end up being the choice. And it's unfortunate because I think that it's just, I don't think the controversy is done here. I really don't. I can tell just from the response from a lot of fans regarding all of the outside stuff that people are frustrated, people are upset. It's not just the play on the court. court. It's now, the stuff going on off the court. And so, I wish it was a different case, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to see what happens too. Just remember, I mean, the final decision maker here is Bob Myers, is Joe Lacob. You might just see that roster spot stay open for the rest of the season. Don't be surprised, folks, but I'm very intrigued by what happens there. Kylen, great show as always. Again, we'll be back tomorrow. I don't know who the guest will be for the post-game show after the Warriors Thunder. Might have a guest, might just go solo. We'll find out. But Kylen, you'll be back with me on Friday. Until then, yeah, let's hope there's no more drama. Let's just hope for just easy times for the rest of the season.
Easy times and wins.
Yeah,
please.
exactly. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.